Éire is the Irish or Gaelic word for Ireland. So take it easy, or as we say in Gaelic, lig de ski, and listen to all things concerning the paranormal in Ireland and indeed beyond. Welcome to Scary EIRE.
All views are Mark Manning's own, but you can express them too if you want to be right about everything like he is.
Mark Manning.
Oh aye, 'tis me indeed. Sit down there now and take the weight off your face, and welcome to 2026, 2K26 if I'm being cool and hanging out with the kids. So I hope you've had a fantastic Christmas time and holiday time and you're looking forward to the new year. I suppose, as I speak to you, the resolutions have already been broken.
But I've good news for you.
Don't worry about such things.
Rather, seek out progress in the new year. Poco a poco, bit by bit. That's how you do it. You see, if you make these massive big resolutions and they don't happen really quickly, well, you just give up on them and you go, I don't really do resolutions anymore. Enough lecturing. I've loads to tell you about, but first of all, let's get into it. Right into the heart of the matter. The MATER Hospital in Dublin, to be quite precise. Did you see what I did there? Right to the heart of the matter. Or the matter of the heart, as told by the Squire, a good friend of this show, David McGlynn.
David McGlynn.
David McGlynn.
David McGlynn. David McGlynn. Oh, please yourselves. It was only a bit of fun. David, would you ever be a good boy and shake your funky groove thing?
Have you ever had your heart broken? Has your heart been in a broken state? Mitral valve prolapse is a condition where one of the valves in your heart doesn't open and shut the way it should. So I was diagnosed with this condition in 2006 and had open heart surgery to repair it. I was in England at the time and the NHS sent me to a private hospital. Southampton Hospital was a very modern state-of-the-art facility with the best of everything. They had me opened, repaired and out of bed walking on the third day and sent home on day 5. In 2011 I was diagnosed with endocarditis, which only a few years beforehand was a death sentence. Endocarditis means basically that bacteria have colonized your heart and are stopping the same valve from working. My surgeon said that I probably had 2 days maximum if I had not gone to A&E. I was coughing up blood at the time. I was rushed to the MATER Hospital in Dublin that day for immediate surgery. The MATER is a Victorian hospital, now much expanded and modernised. I had spent a lot of time there previously when I was being treated for cancer, but that's a story for another time. The old part of the hospital is still in use and very tired. You can easily imagine the scene as it might have been 100 and more years ago, and the corridors held echoes. Nothing audible, but it's just not an easy feeling. It's as if others are looking at you and empathising. Maybe that's the word. I imagined people slowly shaking their heads and feeling sorry for me. It's a sad place. If you've ever had general anaesthetic, you'll know that once you've been stitched back together by the surgeon, you're wheeled out into a recovery room where you are monitored by a nurse. I awoke to find a nurse sat astride my torso, applying pressure to a pad that was covering the wound site, which was still bleeding. She smiled and said, "There you are. We're just tidying up. Don't worry about the blood." I woke again. I must have fallen back under the influence of the anaesthetic, and I was in another different room. Mine was the only bed, and the walls had shiny Victorian tiles, up to chair rail height. That was what struck me. The tiles and the age of the room. It was pristine, but it was dated. Not quite what I would have expected. A nurse entered the room from a door beside the foot of my bed and asked if I needed anything, and I said I was fine, thanks. She left and I heard another door open, from my right-hand side and behind me. A man entered and walked down the side of the room. He picked up my chart and sat in a chair beside the bed. He was facing the end of the bed. He said nothing. His clothes seemed to me to be very old-fashioned, 1930s in style. He wore a gabardine-type coat and pinstriped suit with immaculately polished brogue shoes. His glasses were those circular ones that we call John Lennon glasses. He took a clipboard from his briefcase. Who carries leather satchel-type briefcases anymore? I asked him who he was and he simply said, "I'm a dentist. I'm here to check that your teeth are all okay because it could be a real problem if something was to go wrong during heart surgery." I said, "It's a bit late for that now, they've done it." He glanced sideways and said, "Well, it's a good thing I checked." Took his glasses off, folded them, placed them in the case, put the case in his satchel and walked out through the same door that he had entered. I woke again later and there was a nurse sitting at the foot of my bed. She said that she was there to monitor me. I asked if she'd been there all the time, and she said that she had gone to the toilet once, but otherwise she hadn't left since I'd arrived from theatre. I told her what had happened, and she pointed out that there was only one door in the room, the one at the foot of my bed. It is normal practice to check patients for dentures and loose teeth, but that isn't done by a dentist. How strange.
Oh, lucky man indeed, not only from the health end of things, but imagine waking up and finding a nurse and, I quote, astride my torso. That certainly hasn't happened to me in a long time, probably since my 20s. Here, I have a story for you, and it's kind of paranormal, I suppose. And, well, it's an alien story. You see, back in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was footloose and fancy-free, myself and a friend of mine, we saw this notice, and it was for the nurses up in St. Vincent's Hospital, which is only up the road from me now, and they were having a dance. So myself and this guy, Diggy was his name, I remember. So we went because we wanted to cop off with a nurse, essentially, and we didn't realise it was a fancy dress night. So all these beautiful nubile nurses turned up in period costumes and, you know, Dracula outfits, but I ended up with the alien. And she had all this kind of black makeup all over her face with these little stars and stuff. And now, we didn't do anything nasty like, the horizontal mambo or anything like that. I was far too callow. But we had a snog, a kiss. And I distinctly recall waking up the next morning in my little grief hole of a flat. And I looked in the mirror and I got an awful fright because my face was all black with little bits of glitter all over it. Anyway, yes. Yes. Gems with the times. So anyway, a dentist happened, as you heard in the Squire story there. What was all that about? A time slip, I suppose. What else is coming up on today's podcast? Well, before I say anything else, I'd like to say hello to the folks down in Puka Vogue Paranormal Investigators in Killarney, County Kerry, for they have their own podcast now called Let's Talk Paranormal, available on Spotify and other platforms. Good luck to PJ and the team.
Good luck to PJ and the team.
You might remember last time around I spoke about Margaret McGrogan, who's an academic in one of the universities here, and she's putting together a survey on all things strange and unusual. Did speak to her since the new year. Her and her family were still recovering from an awful bout of flu, so I didn't push her on it. But if you check out last month's podcast, all the details are there.
Mark Manning.
Later on, we'll be listening to a new EVP from Jenny from Emerald Isle Paranormal. She was kind enough to share one that she recently recorded in Cumber House in County Derry. And angry birds. What's that got to do with Ireland? Well, hang around and you'll find out. And always listen to your Irish mammy. I'll be talking about that as well. But now, an Irish woman living in England for many years and a tale of a time she spent in London. Concerning The Vanishing Lady. Author Tara Moore.
The next one I want to tell you about is more interesting, I think, than scary. And it was something that happened several years ago. I was sitting in rush hour traffic, going nowhere fast, outside Tooting Beck station. It was winter, and I remember it was quite rainy. You could see the reflections of the street lights and shop lights on the pavement. And I was sort of sitting there idly, and unlike me, seemed to have not too much on my mind, which is when I tend to be more receptive to any supernatural type experience. Anyway, I was watching people coming out of Tooting Beck tube station and thronging the pavement. There were so many. And suddenly I just saw a young woman, and my eyes were drawn to her. For no apparent reason, because there really wasn't anything that would have singled her out. I never saw her face. I just assumed she was young from the clothes she was wearing. And I can see those perfectly even now. You know, she had a trench coat on, jeans and boots. Her back was to me, and her hair was long and smooth and dark. And for some reason, I just couldn't take my eyes off her. And suddenly I realised that I couldn't see her feet anymore, and she was disappearing from the feet up into the ether. As I said, it wasn't remotely scary. I remember thinking, oh, I've just seen a ghost. But it made me think about something a shaman once told me, and he said, in every crowd of people you see, Amongst those people, although you don't realise it, are ghosts, and that of course ghosts are not always the misty, ethereal, apparition type things, but that many of them look certainly as solid as you or I. Anyway, I just thought that was quite an interesting experience.
Not paranormal. Mark Manning is real. Now that's a scary thought.
Bertie Brosnan here. Recently did the Scary EIRE podcast with Mark and I really enjoyed it. Hopefully you can listen to that podcast as well. But I'm a filmmaker, author and video producer for anyone that doesn't know me. You can get all my information, all my links at www.BertieBrosnanFilms.com, including my recent book, The Forgotten Prince, a novella detailing Brian Boru, the Battle of Clontarf, his son Donica and Brodier of Man, the villain of the piece. This is a part of a trilogy and I'm writing the sequel at the moment. You can get it via my shop, www.BertieBrosnanFilms.com, or just go on to Amazon and type in The Forgotten Prince, Bertie Brosnan, and it should come up. Thank you so much. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Of course, those of you who know all about the paranormal know about EVPs, electronic voice phenomena. Now, these are the kind of auditory artifacts that are picked up on microphones during investigations by paranormal investigators around various historic places or areas of note. Jenny Sullivan, who we've had on the show before, was good enough to share one from Cumber House in County Derry. Jenny has headed up Emerald Isle Paranormal Investigators since 2016 and it's still going strong. I just want to give a background to Cumber House first of all before we listen to aforementioned EVP. This is a little piece from a site called spiritedisle.ie, which I highly recommend for all things Irish and haunting. Let's talk about Cumber House. It's a distinguished Georgian-era estate with a deeply layered past. Constructed around 1780, it was the ancestral seat of the Brown Leckie family, an influential landowning lineage in Ulster. The house showcases the refined elegance of late 18th century architecture, marked by symmetrical proportions, large sash windows and sweeping grounds typical of estates belonging to the landed gentry of the time. The Brown Leckie family held considerable social and political sway in the region. As major landowners, they managed extensive agricultural lands and contributed significantly to the local rural economy. Historical records suggest that the estate included farmland, forests and numerous outbuildings, supporting a small community of workers, tenants and domestic staff. Cumber House's historical footprint widened in the 20th century, particularly during World War II, when it was requisitioned to house Allied troops. This wartime chapter left an enduring impression, physically on the estate and culturally, through stories of interactions between local residents and soldiers that have been passed down through generations. Though the house experienced periods of decline in later years, it remained a landmark of local heritage and a focal point of ghostly legend. One of the most chilling legends tied to Cumber House centres on the patriarch of the Brown family. After his death, a local priest reportedly declared that the elder Brown was burning in the fires of hell. Outraged by the claim, Brown's son confronted the priest and demanded proof. Pressured by the confrontation, the priest knelt, drew a circle on the floor, and began to pray. To the shock of onlookers, the elder Brown is said to have appeared within the circle, engulfed in flames. Overcome with fear, the priest fled the estate and never returned. In the aftermath, another clergyman was summoned to perform an exorcism. According to legend, he successfully confined the restless spirit to a tree on the property. Even now, strange phenomena such as scratching sounds and low moans are said to echo from the area around the tree. Further references to paranormal activity at the property have included sightings of dark figures and shadowy apparitions, disembodied footsteps and moaning sounds. Hang on. Sorry, just had to do that, don't know why. objects moving of their own accord, a vacuum cleaner switching itself on, and musical instruments being played by unseen forces. Now then, dear listener, what you're about to hear is an EVP from Cumber House. It was recorded on a recent investigation, and the setup was essentially 2 or 3 investigators on the property. Now, one of these investigators starts to sing an old Irish song called Grace. It's all about an Irish patriot from the 1916 Rising called Joseph Mary Plunkett. And just before he was executed by the British in Kilmainham jail, he was married to a lady called Grace, and hence the song. It was a song made famous by the late Irish singer Jim McCann, and later on, old tight trousers himself, Rod Stewart, butchered it. So let's listen to the song. And just at the very end of it, a male voice comes in and says, "Goodbye." Now, make of it what you will, but I do know Jenny Sullivan from Emerald Isle Paranormal, and a most honourable and honest lady she is. You'll hear it, and then I'll play the EVP twice more, so you can listen to it forensically. Here we go.
That place is shining ring on your finger. There won't be time to share or be mistake.
Yeah, a couple of things over the years, but I've learned. Well, I suppose it's not learned. I've just become accustomed to it, and I think it's kind of, it's maybe another sense or something. But often when you go into places, you'll get a feeling for the place, and you'll get a feeling of whether or not it's comfortable. And whatever causes that, who knows what causes that, but we have an intuition, we have an inbuilt intuition. I can't describe what it is or where it comes from, or the physics of it or the chemistry of it, but it's there, and anybody will tell you to stick with your intuition. If you think something doesn't feel right, then don't hang around.
Superb advice from regular contributor to Scary EIRE, David McGlynn, aka The Squire. And don't hang around either. If you've got an Irish paranormal tale to tell, simply email paranormalireland@protonmail.com and it'll be read out for you. Or you get to tell it on air yourself. That's paranormalireland@protonmail.com. Mark Manning.
Oh, and I would just echo, get in touch with us by email, because that way I can gauge basically our listenership, which I'm told by the good people at Paranormal Radio UK is pretty good. We are the second most. We aim to please the second most downloaded podcast on the platform. So that's what I was told recently, so that's good news. But you can boss that for me by contacting me. If you do listen to this show, reach out. Get me at the email address, which is paranormalireland@protonmail.com. Will you do that for me? Surprise me, and I'll make sure that we give you a nod next time we're on. So, yeah, sometimes stuff just comes into your mind. And in my case, I vaguely remember a documentary I heard on radio back sometime in either the late 70s or early 80s. It stuck in my mind because it concerned an unusual natural event in Ireland. And this was, believe it or not, a battle of the birds. Oh, yeah. Angry birds we're talking about. An actual battle took place and blood and feathers were spilled. So I did a little bit of research and I discovered just over 10 years ago there was an article in the Irish Independent, a newspaper of note here, and it concerns exactly what I've been talking about. So basically the breed of bird was starlings, I believe. Here we go. The starling phenomenon was remarkable. 2 great murmurations, there's a word to conjure with, of the bird separately gathered over Cork for several days, sending small emissary groups back and forth until, negotiations having obviously broken down, all hell broke loose over the Lee on October 12th, 1621. It was a gruesome affair that trembling fear and terror brought to all who saw the battle fought. With loud and chattering cries each company 'gainst the other flies, with bloody beaks remorseless still their feathered foes to maim or kill, where whilst this battle did remain, their bodies fell like drops of rain. Now I know the renowned diarist Samuel Pepys documented all this, as well as a Richard Channy who produced another diary of events. 7 months later, on May 31st, 1622, followed what was described as the lamentable burning of Cork, with fire from heaven, and the citizens overwhelmed with woe, for no one knew where to run or go. The Starling battle was seen as a portent. One pamphleteer, writing reprovingly, Cork was first warned and then destroyed for her sins. Scientific sources point out that animal and bird fights usually occur over territory, food, shelter, and mates. Introspective aggression, in which animals or birds attack members of their own species, is widespread across the animal kingdom, from ragworms, salmon and lobsters to songbirds, rats and chimps. There's an amusing story of one chimpanzee, famous through the work of behavioural scientist the late Jane Goodall, that intimidated rivals by banging 2 oil cans together. Starling numbers have fallen considerably in recent years, but annual mermations, especially over the Midlands, are welcomed by the public with a mixture of awe and admiration for their peaceful, aerial wafting, as if to the strains of a celestial waltz, being played only for them, as perhaps it may well be.
Hello, Scary Era listeners. My name is Anthony Kerrigan, and I'm a member of a paranormal psychical research team called Ghost.Era. You can catch up on where we have been, also see what we've got up in the future by logging in to our website, www.ghostera.net. You can also watch shows of the Ghost.Era channel, where we interview numerous people in the field of the paranormal and Fortina. You can also check us on our social media pages, on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube by just typing in Ghost.Era or Ghost.Era Paranormal. You can also watch our new show, Phantasm Collective, on channels such as Prime UK and also Paraflix and other streaming services to be announced. I just got to deal with this ghost now. Get out! Get out!
Ah yes, Anthony, old paranormal pants himself. I call him that because he wears these amazing kind of spangled trousers that would do the edge out of you two proud. And then his fingers are like Elvis. They glisten with things like sovereigns and jewellery and skulls and all that kind of stuff. And he's absolutely brilliant and a total mine of information when it comes to the paranormal. So do check out Ghost.Era. Earlier I was saying to always listen to your Irish mammy. Mammy being a word for mother, or mum, as you might say in the States. And my mother grew up in a place called the Curragh in County Kildare. It's very flat, green, and it's famous for its Curragh racecourse. So I have a history going back there because her sister, my auntie, Carmel, was secretary of the Curragh racecourse way back. Anywho, my mother used to regale me with these stories when I was a kid about what she'd get up to. I might have mentioned this one before, but it's relevant today because of a little bit more research. So she told me that her and her friends used to go to an old English estate in the region of Kildare. And she used to say it was Blackers or Blackhards. I used to pick it up like Blackhards. And she would intrigue me with these stories about they'd mosey on up, they'd hide behind a hedge, and they'd look in. And there was either a lady or one of the daughters, now it's not Peeping Tom stuff, but they'd be looking in, or a maid perhaps, and they'd see this lady, and she'd sit down at the dresser, you know, the old, with a mirror on top of it, and she'd be doing her hair in the mirror, and she wouldn't actually lift the comb or hairbrush. She would simply gesture, and they would levitate into her hands. And correspondingly, she would comb herself a nice mullet or hairdo, barnet, whatever. So it was almost like there was witchcraft or something involved. But I, as a younger man then, I would research on the internet blackguards, blackguards, and I could not find anything. So I began to think, well, maybe that was just in my head. All those things she told me in the early 1970s, it was in my head. Blackers, blacker. Anyway, stand back in amazement, because the residence she was likely referring to was called Castle Martin. I think it's in the area of Straffan in County Kildare. And guess what, folks? There was a major blacker in the area, probably in Castle Martin House. And he had a military service with the 3rd Battalion Royal Dublin Fusiliers, in brackets Kildare Militia. Major Blacker, the second in command of the 3rd Battalion Dublin Fusiliers, has left the service, and in him the battalion has lost a very good officer and one who has had a long connection with the battalion, for he was appointed lieutenant in the Kildare Militia October 1874 and has held his present rank since August 1889. It is expected that Captain Greason, the senior company commander of the battalion, will be promoted to the rank of Major in the battalion. He joined it as second lieutenant in August 1878 and was promoted to the rank of captain in 1885. Now, it does go on. Death of Major Blacker, Naas, Thursday night. And this says, Major Blacker died this evening at 5:15 at Lady Carden's residence, Westtown, Straffan, where he had lain since the opening meet of the Kildare Hounds on Tuesday fortnight, when, it will be remembered, his horse fell back on him in a farmyard and broke his pelvis. Up to midday yesterday, Wednesday, his progress gave the utmost satisfaction in his medical attendant, Dr. O'Donnell Brown. But then a change came, and Sir Thomas Miles and Surgeon Lane Joint were summoned from Dublin. But the patient never rallied and passed away, as stated. That's an excerpt from the Freeman's Journal, Friday, November 22nd, 1907. So, perseverance. That's what it's all about. I discovered, yes, there was a link there. Major Blacker, R.I.P. And I know there's a Castle Martin house connected there somewhere. I think he lived there. Anyway, I'm going to change tact now slightly. I would like you to listen to what I consider to be a remarkable audio recording. Is it related to Ireland? No. But it is very much related to the Old English families that you've heard about just there. As an audio person, I come across all kinds of bits of audio, and one stuck in my mind around 2009, and I discovered it in my archives only recently. And it concerns the memories of an elderly lady. Now, she is recorded, I'd say, sometime in the 1970s or 1980s. She has long passed, I'd imagine. All I know is her name was Olga, and she seems to be very upper crust, old school, hoity-toity cucumber sandwiches. And she is recalling her childhood in the British Raj in India, where they had servants galore and were treated like lords. But essentially, it all seemed to work. She begins her recollections talking about a panther's footprints in the garden. Now, what I think is remarkable about this is if you listen to it, yeah, there's an interview going on, but it's not a really official one. It's almost like somebody, as an afterthought, just switched on a cassette recorder to listen to the ramblings of this elegant lady. And you'll hear that it's not a professional interviewer. If anything, he's very lax. He's, oh yeah, really? Is that right? Yeah. He doesn't push her for information. Rather, it flows, and she imparts it, as I said, most eloquently. So it's two people having a conversation. We're listening in, and it's almost like they are oblivious to the recording process. So that's what I love about it. It's almost atmospheric. It's historical, and we really are just eavesdropping on two people. Olga was obviously a remarkable lady in a remarkable time. Now, if you bear with it, it's a minute or two long, thereabouts. I'm going to let the recording play on a tiny bit, 'cause you'll actually hear her just shuffling about. It's very sweet and magical. Listen up, particularly to the first few words.
Do you ever sort of have a recurrence of things that happened years and years and years ago? Incidents?
Recurrence or memories?
Memories?
Yeah.
I have one vivid memory of the panther's footmarks in the garden.
Panther?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
She had some dogs, and there was the shoulder a little way beyond the house, and there was always a panther there.
What's a shola?
A little forest. Yes, a shoulder is a forest.
All right.
And so these stupid things come to one's mind occasionally. I suddenly saw somebody collecting some drinking water. We had a spring. You had to go down the road to it. It came out of the mountain, and you always get the drinking water from there.
Uh-huh.
But of course I was always brought up to be very careful of water, because we had to have a man who was hired for the entire day to carry water up a quarter of a mile up a hill with a couple of buckets.
Up to
No, that's in Cotegary.
Kieran.
My mother's house.
Oh.
We didn't have any pull plugs or anything like that. And this man was hired, and the whole day he spent going up and down the hill, quarter of a mile, with a couple of kerosene tins on the end of his pole.
How many trips a day did he do?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. Because it was quite steep. And he was known as the waterman. And he used to have to come at 5 o'clock in the morning to heat the baths, because they all had morning baths. And whatever the weather, and what cold or hot or wet or dry, the men had to be there, and the baths had to be ready by 7 o'clock. Heated, 3 stones and kerosene tin.
Baths for who?
Well, family. My mother, my father. I had to share my mother's bath. She had first bath, and I went in with the extra hot water. Tin tubs.
Yeah.
And no sanitation. We had thunder boxes and a pit in the garden. And a person who came twice a day to deal with the lavatory. Frightfully insanitary, really. As a matter of fact, they've got a thunder box in the museum, exactly like what we had. And all the bath water was collected to water the garden.
Now, was your father really kind of retired really all the time that you knew him?
Oh, he retired when I was quite young.
When you were quite young?
Because he was 20 years old.
Yeah.
More older than my mother. She was his second wife.
Yes. But he was in the army when you were born?
Yes.
So was he away?
Well, no, we were all in Secunderabad.
Uh-huh.
And then he retired, and then we went up to the hills.
Uh-huh.
I have a vague recollection of a place called Yorkcourt, which was a very horrible little hill station. They tried to settle there, and they didn't like it. It was full of Anglo-Indians and nothing else.
All right.
And so they eventually went to the Nilbert.
Uh-huh.
And I remember playing on the hilltop where they built St. Luke's Church.
Yeah.
And there were no street lights in Cotegary.
Uh-huh.
Had a torch. And I remember seeing the panther's eyes on the bank. It used to squat there waiting in case the dogs came out. And the dogs always had to be taken out on a lead after dark.
Yeah.
I always remember seeing a panther come out on a rock. I had some friends who lived about 2 or 3 miles out, And I used to go after lunch and go and visit them.
Mm.
And they had this house, and then there was a rock. And at 4 o'clock, this panther used always to come out onto the rock and to sport itself like a cat.
Uh-huh.
Rolling over and licking itself. And I always remember that, and I used to go and watch it. I read the number of miles I walked in those days.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was perfectly safe. I was able to go out by myself. The Indians wouldn't dare to do anything. In fact, they sort of looked up to you.
Mm.
And I remember when my father was alive, he always used to go out with a gun in the evening.
Right.
And sometimes I went with him. We went out in the jungles. We sat behind a guava bush and waited for the game to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Deer used to come out and graze. He always used to take a gun with him, but he never shot anything. And we used to watch these things. I've seen wild pig and all such things.
What did he die of, your father? Was it just sort of old age or anything particular? Just old age.
Eventually, I think he had a heart attack or something.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I'm trying to think how old he was. 90 something, I think.
About 83.
Oh, was it?
83, yeah.
Oh, is that all?
83.
Oh, good gracious me. Oh, I think he was older than that. Maybe it was my sort of imagination being young.
Yeah.
Really, good gracious.
Was he ill for long, or did he go quite quickly, do you think?
I think he was ill for about a week or something like that.
Yeah.
What a wonderfully sweet, elderly, classic British lady of her times. Rest in peace, Olga. I hope you are with your dear papa now, enjoying all the good Lord has to give you. That's it on Scary Era. From myself, Mark Manning, it's goodbye. Do get in touch, of course, Paranormal Ireland at protonmail.com. I'd like to thank all our contributors to the show. You are the guys that make it happen right here. Take care, 'cause I care.